Okay, I want to dive deep into exactly how I'm making this slime for my blackworms that are eating. First, this is my bucket. I have all of these floating media balls on there. You can see it's starting to coat each individual one. You can use them to put in your cultures. The blackworms will gladly pick off of them. But most of the biofloc will actually sink to the bottom when you turn the aeration off. You just give it a second and everything will drop to the bottom. But also in the bottom of this bucket that I have going on, I have different stones in there. This is some dragon stone. I have pieces of the marine pure gems, and this is where I put the pod. I also put the Estus stones in here before I used them, so they were nice and mature and had biofilm on them. I just give it about 15 minutes and I siphon it out with a turkey baster. I then get one of my baby brine shrimp hatcheries. I have some DIY ones like this one. I have some other ones that I bought, but it doesn't matter. Any one that'll let it settle is what you want to do. And it's perfect because this is set up for harvesting baby brine shrimp, which is kind of the same thing that we're getting ready to do. The bottom has an airline hooked up to it. When you turn that off, you can adjust the nozzle and that will bring out the biofloc, just like you're harvesting baby brine shrimp. I'm sure we're all familiar with this. And the result is it's still going to settle a tiny bit, but you can use that water. It doesn't matter. And if you look closely, this concentrated biofloc has blackworms living in it. They get transferred through the media, either the floating media or the stones, and they're living in the bucket with heavy aeration, major inputs of carbon and nitrogen, and they're surviving. They look perfectly healthy to me. Now, let's get into what you can use to make this. Actually, you probably have most of this at home right now. I try to utilize the things that I already have. I have a little homestead, I have animals that produce waste. I wanted to try to limit that waste. And blackworms have been used in this way before. They've actually been used in a lot of treatment plants to reduce the amount of sludge that is produced. I started initially experimenting with the waste from my rabbits and moved to guinea pigs and chickens. And yes, some of it comes with risk from pathogens, so make sure you look into it if you're going to use any of those items because there's a safe way to do it. But the batch that I'm showing you does have fish food in it. It actually has these Vitabrites from Hikari. They're bright red, and that's why it's turning the biofloc red. I also have these other little bits from Tetra, I believe, and also flakes. Each one of these will degrade at a different rate. That's why I'm using 3 separate kind. Plus, I want that red coloration. I can look right at the blackworms and tell if they're eating it. And the carbon I'm using, a little bit of molasses, not much at all because it's fast. And actually, this is some cream of wheat that I had laying around. And I put it in a grinder because I want to make it as fine as possible. I'm using about 2 teaspoons worth of this per day. I threw together another explainer video, so hopefully you can understand it a little bit better and you too can make this in your home.
Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I am so incredibly pumped to be hanging out with you today because, well, we're unlocking something truly game-changing. We're going to dive right into the secrets of cultivating biofloc. And honestly, the best part, we're doing it using everyday household items. So get ready to completely rethink how you maintain your aquatic live foods.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll be covering 1. The biofloc secret, 2. DIY biofloc ingredient list, 3. Setting up your hatchery, 4. The golden 2-1 ratio, 5. Look, smell, and weight, and finally, 6. Join the daily series.
Section 1. The biofloc secret.
Let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. You know that absolute soul-crushing frustration of dealing with crashed, foul-smelling culture tanks? We've all been there. So you gotta ask yourself, are you feeding your live cultures all wrong? If you're treating these cultures exactly like a standard, spotlessly clean fish tank and just dropping food directly to the aquatic worms, well, the research points to a big yes. The secret here is a total paradigm shift. You see, you shouldn't be feeding the worms directly. The microbes should actually be feeding the worms.
So, what exactly is biofloc? It's essentially a biological processing layer. Think of it like a highly efficient, microscopic compost pile suspended right there in the water. Instead of waste just sitting there rotting and releasing toxic ammonia, these clustered communities of heterotrophic bacteria and organic matter actively grab that waste. Then they convert it into a dense, super nutritious, protein-rich slime. It's literally a continuous, natural food web. How cool is that?
Section 2. DIY biofloc ingredient list.
Now that we know what this microscopic processing plant actually does, how do we fuel it? The amazing thing is, you absolutely do not need expensive commercial lab additives. You can build this entire thing with stuff found right in your kitchen. We're talking everyday household ingredients, like flour, sugar, molasses, regular dog or cat food, and even animal waste. Why these specific items? Because carbon-rich sources like your sugar and molasses, when combined with protein sources like pet food, perfectly stimulate the exact heterotrophic bacteria we need to form a healthy, thriving biofloc.
Now, really quick, I do need to issue a strict warning here, and I cannot stress this enough. While natural waste can definitely be part of the nitrogen cycle, you must always research the safe usage of any household animal waste before introducing it to your culture. We're trying to cultivate healthy aquatic life here, not introduce harmful pathogens. So consider this your mandatory pro tip for the day.
Section 3. Setting up your hatchery.
The really good news here is that you do not need massive, expensive commercial equipment to pull this off. Because this kind of setup requires constant mixing, a scientific Emhoff cone does the exact same job as a simple inverted 2-liter soda bottle or a standard baby brine shrimp hatchery that you can easily use at home. That conical, inverted shape, it's absolutely perfect for making sure continuous aeration reaches every single corner. That prevents the flocks from settling at the bottom and keeps them suspended right up in the water column where your organisms can actually feed on them.
All right, here is your super simple 3-step setup guide. Step 1, harvest that dark aquarium muck. You know, the mulm you normally just throw away during routine water changes. Step 2, add that muck straight to your hatchery. I want you to think of this muck as your sourdough starter. It's a living matrix bringing millions of essential, already established microorganisms to totally jumpstart your new DIY setup. And step 3, turn on continuous aeration to stimulate the flock formation. Those bubbles are going to help the bacteria proliferate and physically hold the flock together.
Section 4. The golden 2-to-1 ratio.
Okay, I know. The math behind biofloc can sometimes seem super intimidating, but don't worry, we're going to make this incredibly simple. In commercial aquaculture science, they meticulously calculate this highly complex 15-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio based on total ammonia nitrogen and exact carbon percentages. It's a lot of testing and complicated math. But for our home cultures, we get to use a highly accessible DIY rule. A much simpler 2 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen ratio. So much easier, right?
Remember this golden rule, 2-to-1. For every 1 part of a nitrogen source you add, like that protein-heavy pet food we talked about, you need to add roughly 2 parts of a carbon source, like sugar or molasses. Doing this keeps the heterotrophic bacteria completely dominating the system, which allows them to rapidly consume all that excess nitrogen and turn it into safe, edible biofloc. It's basically magic.
Section 5. Look, smell, and wait.
Okay, we've got the setup, and we've got the ratio. So how do we actually monitor the health of this culture without thousands of dollars in lab equipment? Well, we use our senses. First, let's just look at it. A successful biofloc system is going to look, quote-unquote, dirty to a traditional fish keeper. I know it goes against every instinct we have, but you have got to fight the urge to clean it. If it looks like a brown, cloudy tea, you are right in the sweet spot. That means your system is healthy and perfectly balanced. However, if the water suddenly takes on a heavily milky or overly cloudy white appearance, that means you've added way too much carbon and you need to back off immediately.
Next up, we use our nose. A healthy system should smell nice and earthy, almost like wet soil or a damp forest floor. But if you walk into the room and you're suddenly hit with a sharp, sour smell or this really foul, raw sewage-like odor, believe me, you will know it when it hits you. That means your nitrogen balance is completely out of whack, probably from overfeeding the protein source, and you need to back off the nitrogen right away.
I absolutely love this quote from our source material. The goal is not to create decay without limits. The goal is controlled biological processing. It's incredibly vital to remember that rich, functioning organic material is entirely different from uncontrolled, rotting decay. We're out here curating a living processing plant, not building a garbage dump.
And that brings us to arguably the most critical rule. Be patient. A culture in its absolute infancy simply doesn't have the microbial biomass required to handle large loads of waste. You must use tiny, fractional inputs for those first 2 to 3 weeks. You have to give that biological starter plenty of time to establish its living community before you start pushing the limits. Section 6. Join the daily series.
as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to look ahead to the next phase of this whole learning journey. Because understanding the science and the steps is one thing, but actually seeing it applied, that's where the magic really happens. So if you want to see this DIY recipe in action day by day, you are absolutely going to want to stay tuned. The creator is launching an upcoming daily video series where you can follow along as they demonstrate this exact step-by-step process in real time. It's going to be phenomenal to watch a culture build completely from scratch. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Today, we've completely reframed what it actually means to maintain an aquatic culture. You honestly don't have to constantly battle waste and do endless water changes anymore. Instead, you can cultivate an environment that actually uses that waste to thrive. So the question is, are you ready to let the microbes do the heavy lifting for your next culture?
And to help you guys even further, I'm going to start a brand new series. You're going to follow me day by day, starting a brand new culture of biofloc. You're going to see how easy it is to produce this in less than 30 seconds a day. I'll put a list in the description of all the things we're going to need to start this, but I'm sure it's everything you already have at home. So make sure you join me tomorrow. We're going to set up the container and get this biofloc started. Let's take our blackworm cultures to the next level, because if we don't try, we won't know if it works.